Remember your creepiest night shift? I used to work the night shift at Toys R Us, and whoever decided the girls' toy aisle needed motion-activated dolls deserves to be investigated. I'm not saying jail, but maybe a long conversation with a therapist. Every night they'd shut off about half the lights to save electricity. Sounds reasonable until you're the poor idiot dragging boxes through a store that suddenly looks like a bargain bin horror movie. The aisles get all shadowy, shelves stretch forever, and every toy somehow looks like it's been waiting for you to show up. Then I'd hit that aisle. Dead quiet, like weird quiet. The kind that makes your own footsteps sound illegal. I'm hauling this giant box, minding my business, thinking about literally anything except tiny plastic demons. Then one doll notices me. Click. Its head slowly turns. Then another one wakes up. Then all of them. I'm talking an entire army of dolls snapping their heads toward me, like I just walked into a surprise staff meeting. Their eyes don't blink. They just lock onto you. It's like getting stared down by 100 tiny tax auditors with dead batteries. And then the sounds start. One starts laughing, another starts crying, one screams some cheerful catchphrase that absolutely does not sound cheerful at 2:30 in the morning. Another starts waving its arms around like it's trying to flag down Satan's Uber. Suddenly the whole aisle erupts into this nightmare orchestra of glitchy speakers, plastic limbs flailing, and those dead-eyed little faces tracking me as I walk by. It looked like popcorn exploding, except every kernel hated me personally. Now for context, I'm 6'4", around 300 pounds, covered in enough body hair to qualify as my own winter coat. I'm not exactly the guy who scares easily. Didn't matter. The second those dolls all woke up together, every survival instinct I had packed its bags and clocked out before I did. I hit the fastest nope of my entire life. Didn't run, because running means panic, but I definitely performed what I'd call an aggressively motivated speed walk. You can keep your haunted houses, give me ghosts, give me abandoned hospitals. At least ghosts usually have the decency to haunt one person at a time. Those dolls, they worked in teams. Story 2. I used to bartend, so getting off work usually meant somewhere between 2 and 4 in the morning, because apparently that's when the universe clocks in for its weird shift. Slow Monday night, we were wiping down the bar, counting tips, already mentally halfway home. Then the front door opened. A woman walked in. At first, we all figured, great. Another homeless person wandered inside. Happens in the city. Usually it's a 30-second conversation and everyone's on their way. My manager called out, "Sorry, we're closed. Can't serve you. You'll have to head out." She didn't answer, didn't even look at him. She just kept walking. Slow, silent. Eyes fixed straight ahead, like she was following GPS directions, only she could hear. That's when my brain started waving little red flags. She didn't actually look homeless. Her skin was gray, not dirty gray, not pale, just this weird, smooth, almost stone-colored gray I'd never seen on an actual person before. Tight skin, barely any wrinkles, like someone carved a statue and forgot statues aren't supposed to walk around. Then I noticed the tattoo. 4 black lines starting from the middle of her chin, spreading down her neck like cracked glass, or roots growing through concrete. Weirdly clean, weirdly deliberate. Also, no shoes, which honestly should have been the least creepy thing about her, but somehow my brain filed it under, yeah. Add that to the growing list of absolutely not. She reached the bar, grabbed a stool, and started pulling it out. My manager raised his voice. "Hey, we're closed, and you need shoes. You have to leave." She ignored him completely, sat down, then she turned her head toward me. Not fast, worse. Slow enough that every second felt intentional, like one of those security cameras that keeps rotating until it's pointed directly at you. She looked me dead in the eyes. Didn't smile, didn't blink, just said, completely calm, "I like you." Fantastic. That's exactly what you want to hear from the human sleep paralysis demon who just wandered into your bar. My hand slid onto the panic button under the counter so fast it was basically muscle memory. Every bar has one, and I'd never actually expected to use it. Funny how your job description suddenly updates itself. Our bouncer finally walked over and rested a hand on her shoulder. The second he touched her, she exploded. Not physically, thank God, but with this ear-splitting scream that didn't even sound human at first. High-pitched, manic, nonstop. Like every horror movie editor got together and said, "You know what? Let's traumatize people through surround sound." And here's the part that still messes with me. She never stopped looking at me. The entire time she screamed, her eyes stayed locked on mine. No blinking, no flinching, just screaming like the world was ending while staring straight through me. The bouncer dragged her toward the door anyway, still screaming, still staring. I hit the panic button, and the police showed up pretty fast. They took her away, never found out who she was, never heard what happened after that. I still close my curtains before I go to bed after late shifts, not because I think she's coming back, just because once you've had someone look at you like that, your brain keeps replaying it, like a scratched DVD that only knows one scene, and somehow it gets creepier every time. Story 3. A few months back, my brother moved in with me and picked up a night shift job cleaning a local high school. His shift started at 10 at night and ended just after sunrise. No car, but the school's close enough to walk, so it worked out, at least until one night. A little after midnight, my phone rings. I answer half asleep, already annoyed because nobody calls after midnight unless somebody's dead or needs help moving a couch. Instead, I hear my brother whispering, "Dude, you gotta come get me." What happened? I don't know, some weird shit. Those were his exact words. Now here's the thing. My brother isn't dramatic. If anything, he's the guy who'll ignore a broken leg until someone points out the bone is visible. So hearing panic in his voice, yeah, I threw on whatever clothes I could find and drove over looking like Walmart's newest cryptid. Little backstory. Growing up, my brother always had these weird experiences. He'd swear people were talking to him that nobody else could see. When we lived in this ancient house, he kept telling our parents an older man visited his room every night to tell him bedtime stories. Years later, our dad casually drops, like he's discussing the weather, that a relative had taken his own life in that exact room years before we lived there. Better yet, my brother's description matched him. Fantastic family trivia. Really wish that had stayed in the vault. Meanwhile, I'm the complete opposite. Nothing paranormal ever happens around me. Actually, people started joking I'm some kind of supernatural bug spray. Friends would swear a house was haunted until I came over. Creepy noises stopped. Weird stuff quit happening. Even people having full-blown meltdowns sometimes calmed down after talking to me. I don't know why. I'm basically industrial strength ghost off. So I pull up to the school. My brother is already standing outside the front entrance waiting for me like the building just insulted his mother. He runs over before I've even parked. "You have to come inside." "Why?" "You have to make it stop." Great. Love vague sentences like that. Apparently, every time he walked through the halls, he'd hear lockers opening and slamming shut. Not where he was standing, always around the next corner, or behind him. Like the school was playing the world's creepiest game of Marco Polo. He'd chase the sound, nothing. Walk away, slam. Another hallway, another locker. At this point, he's basically one emotional support animal away from quitting. So we head inside, which honestly looked ridiculous. He's tall and skinny, I'm shorter, rounder, and running on 3 hours of sleep. He was practically glued to my arm like I was carrying premium ghost insurance. We walked every hallway. Nothing. No slamming lockers, no footsteps, no cold spots, no creepy whispers, nothing. The place was quieter than a library after the apocalypse. By the time we'd checked the whole school, it was almost 1 in the morning, and I was ready to go home before my pillow filed a missing person report. Then we spotted one locker standing slightly open, just one. We walked over. My brother reached toward it, stopped, pulled his hand back, then looked at me. "You do it." "Oh, sure, because apparently I'm the designated paranormal customer service representative now." I sighed, grabbed the locker door, and shut it. Click. That's it. No bang, no scream, no demon crawling out like I'd interrupted its lunch break. Nothing happened. My brother finally relaxed enough to breathe. He told me I could leave, as long as I promised to come back if the lockers started acting up again. Fair enough. About a week later, he came home grinning and handed me an envelope. Inside was a thank you note from the head of the custodial department and a $50 Amazon gift card. Apparently my late-night ghost extermination services had been noticed. Easiest $50 I've ever made. Honestly, if every haunting paid that well, I'd start carrying business cards. Story 4. It wasn't technically a night shift, but we were deep into crunch time on this project, so the office basically turned into a sleep deprivation convention. People were surviving on caffeine, bad decisions, and whatever vending machine snacks hadn't expired yet. Seeing coworkers leave at 5 or 6 in the morning had become completely normal, which probably should have been the first red flag. Around 4:45 a.m., I finally called it quits, said goodbye to a couple friends, grabbed my bag, and started the 15-minute walk home. The parking lot was huge, almost empty, and that weird pre-dawn quiet had settled in. You know the kind. Not peaceful, more like the whole world hit pause and forgot to tell you why. That's when I spotted this guy. All black tracksuit, hood up. Cap pulled low, walking on the opposite side of the parking lot. Now, maybe he was just heading somewhere. Maybe he was minding his own business. But my brain immediately filed him under absolutely keep an eye on that dude. Call it paranoia if you want. Paranoia has an undefeated record when it comes to keeping people alive. I kept walking. A minute later, I heard shouting. Turned around. Yep, he was yelling. At me. Couldn't make out the words, but I didn't exactly need subtitles. The body language translated just fine. I picked up my pace and cut between two office buildings. Then I looked back again. There he was, right in the middle of the road, arms stretched out like some low-budget horror movie extra who missed the audition for a zombie show. And here's the part that made every hair on my neck stand up. There was no way he should have been that close. The parking lot was massive. Unless this guy broke into a full sprint while I wasn't looking, physics had apparently decided to take the morning off. Awesome. Exactly what you want before breakfast. At that point, my brain started speedrunning every possible escape plan. Run? Cool. If he chases me, congratulations. Now we're doing cardio together. Duck into the student dorms? Great. Then I'm standing outside pretending I live there while Psycho McTracksuit catches up. Keep walking home? Absolutely not. I'm not giving a stranger my address. That's how you end up on one of those true crime documentaries where everyone says they seemed so normal. Go back to work? Only if I wanted to walk through the darkest alley on campus. I hated that alley in broad daylight. At 5 in the morning? Yeah. Hard pass. So I did the only thing that made any sense. Walk faster. Not enough to scream I'm terrified, but enough to quietly create some distance. I hit the main road where there were actual streetlights, beautiful, glorious civilization, and yanked out my phone, called one of my coworkers. No answer. Called again? Nothing. Again. By this point, I was basically conducting an aggressive phone interview with his voicemail. Meanwhile, my other hand was jammed into my pocket. Gripping my keys like every movie I'd ever seen had convinced me I was suddenly Wolverine. Reality check? Keys are a terrible weapon, but fear doesn't exactly stop to fact-check your survival plan. Finally, on the 6th call, he answered. I don't even remember what I said. Probably something along the lines of, "Hey, don't ask questions, just get out here." To his credit, he didn't hesitate. He grabbed his stuff, ran outside, and stayed on the phone with me the whole time. I ducked into the first takeaway place that had its lights on. Didn't even care if they sold food I liked. At that moment, fluorescent lighting and another human being behind a counter felt like winning the lottery. I stood there pretending to be calm, while internally vibrating like a shopping cart with one busted wheel. The guy never turned onto the street I took, just kept walking. Maybe he'd lost interest. Maybe he was messing with me from the start. Maybe I got lucky. Honestly, I don't care which one it was. My coworker showed up a few minutes later and walked me the rest of the way home. That happened a couple months ago. I still walk home after late shifts sometimes. I'm just smarter about it now. I tell somebody when I'm leaving. I text when I get home. And if my gut tells me someone feels off, I listen, because your instincts might be dramatic, but they're usually a lot cheaper than finding out they were right the hard way. Story 5. I used to work the overnight shift at a group home for kids, and whoever decided to put it inside a giant old Victorian house clearly hated peaceful sleep. The place had been around for decades. Beautiful building during the day. At 3 in the morning? Absolutely cursed. The house had history too. Over the years, a couple of kids had passed away there. Everybody knew it. Nobody really talked about it unless they absolutely had to. You know how workplaces have that one story everyone pretends not to believe, while secretly avoiding the hallway where it supposedly happened? Yeah, that. Most nights were boring. Paperwork, coffee, trying not to fall asleep while the old house creaked every 5 minutes like it was stretching its ancient bones. Victorian houses don't make normal noises. They sound like they're clearing their throat before delivering terrible news. One night, around 3 in the morning, I was sitting alone in the staff room. Dead silent, no TV on, no kids awake, just me trying to survive until sunrise. Out of nowhere, the tissue box sitting on top of the television launched itself across the room. Not slid, not tipped over, launched, like somebody standing next to it had gotten annoyed and swatted it as hard as they could. It hit the floor with a smack that made me jump so hard I almost left my soul in the chair. I just sat there, frozen. My brain desperately trying to explain it away. Air conditioning? No. Maybe it was already falling? Not unless gravity suddenly started throwing fastballs. I sat there shaking for what felt like forever before one thought finally punched through the panic. The room on the other side of that wall. One of the kids was sleeping in there, so I got up and walked to his door. Every step felt heavier than the last. You know when your brain is screaming, "Don't open that door," but your job description says you have to anyway? Yeah, that. The second I reached for the handle, the kid suddenly rolled right out of bed. Just thump, hit the floor, instantly awake. He looked straight at me. Didn't seem confused, didn't ask why I was there. Instead, he just said, "Did you see it?" I froze. He kept staring at me. That's what's been getting me. A pause. The dark thing. Cool. Fantastic. Love that for me. Children have this awful talent for saying horrifying stuff with the exact same tone they'd use to ask for a juice box. No buildup, no drama, just casually dropping nightmare fuel into the conversation like it's tomorrow's weather forecast. I didn't ask what he meant, didn't want details, didn't want a description. My curiosity packed its bags and left the building before I did. I finished the shift, somehow, but I didn't work too many overnight shifts after that. Call me dramatic if you want. I just figured if a flying tissue box and a kid calmly confirming the existence of the dark thing wasn't my sign to find a daytime job, I honestly don't know what would have been. Story 6. I used to pull overnight shifts as the IT guy because, obviously, that's when everyone suddenly decides the servers deserve emotional support. Whole office completely empty, no phones, no keyboards, just me and way too much fluorescent lighting that somehow makes every hallway look like it's waiting to ruin your life. The building had one of those white noise systems running 24/7 to keep daytime conversations from bleeding across the cubicles. Cool idea during business hours. Absolute nightmare fuel at 2 in the morning because when nobody else is there, that white noise doesn't sound like static. It sounds like somebody standing 6 inches behind you, whispering straight into your ear, not loud enough to understand, just enough to make your brain go, hey, you should probably spin around before you become tomorrow's safety meeting. Every single time. And your stupid caveman instincts don't care that you literally installed half the networking equipment in the building. Nope. Brain immediately goes, congrats, you're getting haunted by Office Depot. I'd stop working, whip my head around like a confused raccoon, and nothing. Empty cubicles, empty hallway, empty everything. Then I'd go back to my keyboard. Pssh. Shh. Nope. Again. After about the 20th fake whisper, I wasn't debugging servers anymore. My entire mission became figuring out how to kill that cursed machine. Priorities changed real fast. Network outage? Whatever. Payroll offline? They'll live. Whisperbox dies tonight. Finally found the control panel buried in some maintenance closet like it knew exactly what it was doing. Flipped it off. Silence. The kind of silence that actually has weight, like somebody threw a heavy blanket over the whole building. Honestly, still creepy, but at least it wasn't breathing sweet nothings into my ear all night. Small victories. That's basically the night shift survival guide. Pick whichever thing is less horrifying and pretend you meant to do that. Story 7. Back when I was deployed in Afghanistan, our outpost sat way up in the mountains near the Pakistan border. The first few months were non-stop stress. Every shift felt like waiting for someone to start shooting at you. Then winter showed up, dumped a couple feet of snow everywhere, and suddenly everything got quiet. Too quiet. Turns out silence out there wasn't relaxing. It just gave your brain room to invent new ways to ruin your night. The question stopped being, are we getting attacked? And became, okay, what fresh nightmare is wandering around these mountains tonight? It was sometime in February. I was pulling guard duty in the north-facing machine gun bunker, pitch black outside, so I had my night vision on. Everything looked that weird glowing green that makes even a rock look suspicious. Night vision is awesome until it isn't. It's basically giving your anxiety HD resolution. I'm scanning the hillside when I catch movement. About 100 meters up, there's a guy, except he isn't standing. He's on all fours, just crouched behind a boulder like some feral animal that accidentally downloaded human software. Half his body hidden, completely still, and he's facing me. Now, we'd barely seen any Taliban activity for weeks because nobody wanted to hike through freezing mountains for a gunfight. Even they were like, nah, we'll circle back in the spring, so seeing anybody out there made 0 sense. I swung the machine gun toward him and flipped on the visible laser. Bright red dot, right on his face. Nothing, no flinch, no wave, no panic. He just kept staring at me, which, honestly, somehow felt ruder. By this point, I'd already been blown up before, shot at, almost eaten by an RPG. You know, the usual resume builders. But this was somehow creepier than all of that. Bullets make sense. Random mountain goblin conducting an eye contact competition at 3 in the morning? Absolutely not. So I radioed the Tactical Operations Center. Hey, I've got an unarmed guy on the north side just staring at me. Either tell me I can deal with him or send somebody else to confirm I'm not losing my mind. The sergeant comes back over the radio sounding way too amused. I'm sending someone to babysit you. Real funny. Private shows up, I point at the hill. He looks, freezes, then immediately turns around and speed walks back like his shift suddenly remembered somewhere else to be. A minute later, the sergeant himself comes stomping up to the bunker, probably ready to roast me for wasting everyone's time. I point again. There! He finds the guy, and I swear, the exact second the sergeant locks eyes with him, that dude springs to his feet, jumps onto the boulder, throws his head back, and unleashes the most unhinged scream I've ever heard in my life. Not yelling, not talking, just full volume horror movie. Somebody boiled his soul screaming into the freezing mountain air. It echoed everywhere. The guard tower on the east side heard it, spotted him, and without missing a beat, sent a burst of machine gun fire over his head. If you've never heard 7.62 rounds ripping through dead winter silence, imagine the sky itself slamming a steel door in your face. The screaming guy immediately bailed, jumped off the rock, took off downhill at full speed, still screaming, didn't look back once. Then, nothing. Dead silence for the rest of the night. Our commander wasn't nearly as entertained as everyone else. Security got bumped to 50% immediately, meaning half the outpost stayed awake pulling guard because nobody had the faintest clue what we'd just witnessed. For the rest of that winter, the running joke was that the CIA lost one of their mind control experiments somewhere in the mountains and forgot to come pick him up. We laughed about it because that's what soldiers do, but I'm telling you, I've had people actively trying to kill me, and somehow the guy who just stood there, staring, before screaming at the moon, yeah, that guy still wins. Story 8. I used to finish retail shifts at 3 in the morning, which sounds miserable because it was. By the time I'd clock out, the streets were basically empty, except for the occasional taxi, a couple of raccoons pretending to pay rent, and whatever weirdness the universe scheduled for that night. I lived about 20 minutes away, so I always walked home. Most nights were boring. This one wasn't. About halfway home, I spotted what looked like a pile of ripped-up trash bags lying in the middle of the road. Didn't think much of it at first, just figured somebody's garbage had escaped before pickup. Then I got closer. It wasn't trash. It was a woman, flat on her back, not moving. And let me tell you, when you find what looks like a body at 3 in the morning, your brain doesn't exactly ease into the situation. It goes from 0 to, congratulations, you're about to end up on the evening news in half a second. For a split second, I honestly wondered if this was some kind of setup. You hear stories, one person pretends to need help while somebody else waits nearby. So I'm looking around, checking every parked car, every dark alley, every shadow. My neck probably looked like a malfunctioning security camera. Nothing, just her. I carefully walked over and tried to wake her up. Turns out she'd gotten absolutely blackout drunk and collapsed right there in the middle of the street. She eventually came around, but she was in rough shape. Scrapes on her hands, cuts along her arms, a couple nasty gashes where she'd clearly hit the pavement. She looked like she'd lost a fight with gravity, and gravity had been feeling unusually personal that night. There wasn't any way I was leaving her there, not in the middle of the road. All it would have taken was one distracted driver, one idiot speeding through, or one genuinely awful person deciding to take advantage of someone who couldn't even stand. So I helped her up. Slowly walked her home. Got her cleaned up as best I could, patched up what I could without pretending to be a doctor, got her some water, and stayed until she was actually sober enough to know what planet she was on. Only then did I leave. The funny part, well, funny in the sarcastic sense, was that her place was completely the opposite direction from mine. So after all that, I still had another 20-minute walk back. By the time I finally got home, it was pushing 5 in the morning. I'd been off work for almost 2 hours. Was it exhausting? Absolutely. Would it have been easier to keep walking and tell myself someone else would help? Sure, but sometimes being a decent person is incredibly inconvenient. And honestly, I'd rather lose 2 hours of sleep than spend the rest of my life wondering what happened because I walked past someone who needed help. If you made it this far, thanks for hanging out with me. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know your creepiest night shift experience in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.